Hello, and welcome everybody to the February 2025 Sussex Azure User Group Meetup. First one of the year. Sorry it's taken so long. I think our last one was what, back in
I think it was in November, and we did it ourselves.
We did do it ourselves. So yeah, we talked about AVS last time. Today we've got some amazing stuff on Azure landing zones and Terraform and all the recent additions we've got there. And for those of you lucky enough to be in the room or watching live tonight, because the South Coast Massive is here and looks after a lot of the Azure landing zone stuff. We've got Matt, who I work with in our team, and who wrote a lot of the new Terraform stuff. It's here to come and talk and share all the amazing insights that we've got on that one. But more on that later.
So we're going to go through just a few intro slides. I think our regular members will have seen a lot of these before, but same values and everything apply. If you're new for the first time, you're watching on live for the first time, welcome. So full disclosure, Jack and I both work for Microsoft, Matt does as well, but this is something we do in our own time, no warranty support. This is not a view of our own, it's just, it's not affiliated with Microsoft in any way.
And the same goes for this as well. This is really important for us. So we welcome everybody to this user group. So if at any point you don't feel like these values are being upheld, please come and speak to one of us or one of the Silicon Brighton team, and we'll make sure we deal with that and make sure that you feel safe and welcome at our events and any event across the Silicon Brighton network. Tonight, we obviously kicked off a little bit late, but it's all good. And then we've got Matt talking about Terraform, as I've said. Feel free to stick around afterwards, catch up afterwards, finish off what's left of pizza and drinks, and then we can head off home after that. But nice single talk tonight, get into some real low-level detail. A huge thank you to Runway East, the awesome venue that you're in. They also provided the pizza tonight, so big thank you to them. If any of you are looking for co-working space, or you need shared office space, from anything from 1 to hundreds of you, speak to Runway East. They've got lots of options, as you can see from all of the various offices out here, and some lovely facilities. So yeah, definitely give them a check out. And with that, I think I'm handing over to one of the awesome Silicon Brighton team.
To Cam, yeah.
To Cam. And lots of you have been asking about what Evolve is, so that's good. So that is.
Right, no pressure at all then. Hello everyone, my name's Cam. I work for Silicon Brighton. We are the hosts of the digital tech sector for Brighton and Hove. We support a lot of different meetup groups such as this one tonight, which I'll go into in a second. But first of all, we've got this Evolve banner plastered all around the room with stickers by Grace as well, who's one of the co-founders for Silicon Brighton as well. We're taking it into our own hands and we're doing our flagship event of a conference. All day, meetup of all meetups is what we're calling it. We've been chatting with Jack and Ryan as well about how we want to get the Sussex Azure group involved. And really, they're fantastic because they've been to so many conferences themselves. They just know exactly what you need to do. So imagine that times by 40 different sets of advice coming our way. And how brilliant is it going to be? But yeah, so currently what we're looking for right now is attendees, exhibitors, and sponsors. So scan that QR code. Don't need any signatures on it yet. That's after the event. And yeah, jump in and find out more and ask me and Grace anything you like about Evolve if you still have questions. Back to our usual programming. These are the meetup groups that we support in Brighton and Hove. As you'll see, I believe that's Sussex Azure group. You are bang in the middle. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, one of many meetups. If there's anyone or any group over there that you think would be great that you want to connect with, it is a fantastic pool of people and a great community in Silicon Brighton. So definitely recommend going to some more events. We just want to shout out to our sponsors as well. No, our supporters first, then our sponsors who help us do what we do, whether that's financially, with time, space, or volunteers. We're massively appreciative to all the things that they do for us. And finally, one final QR code is our link tree, goes to our website, goes to our Slack channel, where the conversations do not stop in the room. You can carry on at home. And yeah, we post things like job opportunities as well, and just general fantastic bits and pieces. I think that's my last slide. So I'm going to hand back to Jack and or Ryan.
There you go. Thanks, Cam. And yes, in carrying on the theme of sponsorship, so this night and our user group is sponsored by Servant. Servant are a UK-wide MSP who only specialize in basically doing projects in Microsoft Azure. So Jack and I have been working with the Servant team for a number of years now. They started small, they're growing really, really fast, but they've got all of the kind of Azure creds that you would expect. Really good guys, really approachable, and they're supporting everything that we do for the group tonight, in terms of drinks and everything else. So yeah, check them out if you've not seen them before. I'm working with them in a customer at the moment doing a landing zone that Jack helped design, and in terms of initial discovery to design, execution, super smooth, all on the same Microsoft framework and everything else. So couldn't recommend them enough.
Yeah, very plugged in, and they're also keen contributors back to a lot of our open source stuff. So they contribute back a lot to the caf-enterprise-scale stuff. So like people like Nathan Bird and stuff like that. Like he works for Seven, and like so good little community and like really really knowledgeable guys. So well worth knowing. And they work with some really big brands as well. So people that we all know and probably use. So yeah, definitely worth to check out. Awesome team and really really friendly.
And I'm going to drag them to one of the meetups. Maybe the next one. Maybe the next one after. But you'll be able to meet them in person in one of the coming meets.
Awesome. So yeah, go and give them a check out, and thanks again for sponsoring.
Oh yeah, dates for 25. So we've mapped out kind of our schedule for the year. We don't have speakers for any of these dates, right?
We do have for one in the middle.
We've got one for today, luckily.
And one in the middle. Yeah. We've got some extra stuff around July time.
That's true. Yeah. So as always, if you fancy doing a talk, somebody that wants to do a talk, doesn't have to be a specific Azure technology. It can be a customer story. I did this project. It went really wrong, went really badly. This is something really good in Azure. This is something really bad. It needs work. Just anything that's like you think people could learn from, right? It's a shared experience. So really trying to boost that kind of community input and everything else. And actually, it's been really great with the WhatsApp community that we built late last year. People have been contributing, asking technical questions and everything else. So yeah, please just approach us direct if you think that you've got a talk or an idea for something.
And most importantly, scan the QR code, or if you're a member of the meetup, they're all there ready for you to sign up and say you're available. So you can put them in the calendars now, get them approved with people at home, and you can make them all right now. So they're all available on the meetup page. They just got all TBCs for agendas. So yeah, you can put them all in the calendar and get yourself signed up now so you don't forget. And don't get spammed by me by email. And as Ryan was saying, the WhatsApp community we started has been really good. Lots of good chat going on in there. So please sign yourselves up if you want to. You can leave at any time. But yeah, it's quite an active community. It's quite nice to see lots of things that people are working on and what's going on around the Azure community. And with that, remember you can catch up on tonight.
Oh yeah, we got some really good content actually. So
yeah,
we were saying earlier that I think we've been going over 5 years, nearly 6 years now for this group. Huge amount of content available on our YouTube channel and also the Silicon Brighton channel as well. Check out their YouTube channel. But some of the earlier videos might be a little bit stale in terms of
content.
I think we talked about Azure Firewall and Preview on one of them.
Yeah, probably.
But a lot of it still applies, right? And check out some of the speakers' chats.
Yeah, and you can catch up on tonight as well. And welcome to the online viewers if there are any right now. 10, there you go. Lots of people tuned in already. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Matt. We're going to go and sit down. If at any point, Matt, how do you want to deal with questions just as and when they come?
Yeah, please ask.
The only thing we will say about questions is please wait for me or Ryan to approach you with a microphone so that our online attendees can hear you.
If you could just put your hand up for a while and then one of us will run to you with a microphone. Looking at you, Johnny.
And with that, Matt, over to you. Give it a round of applause for Matt.
Thanks very much. Nice to be here. That was from my holiday in Mexico, which seems like a long time ago now. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about Azure Landing Zones, or what was called Azure Landing Zones, and what we're doing in the Terraform space there. So the branding, let's start with that one. Have you ever got 10 people in a room and asked them to come up with a name for something? Because that's kind of what happened. So yeah, Terraform Platform Landing Zones for Azure Verified Modules is the new branding officially for Azure Landing Zones Terraform. The reason we've done that is because actually we're going to do more in the application landing zone space, and we'll come on to the differences about what is a platform landing zone, what's an application landing zone a bit later. So if you see Terraform Platform Landing Zones for Azure Verified Modules, I'm sorry, but just think ALZ Terraform. So who am I? I work in the same team as Jack at Microsoft. I've got the Matt FFF GitHub handle, which I'll leave it to you to work out why that is. And I'm generally like that on all the professional social media stuff, so feel free to look me up, give me a follow. But yeah, that's me. I've been at Microsoft for about 10 years. No, 9 years. It'll be 10 years next year. So yeah, get the slightly larger crystal. I started off in services at MCS, and then I moved across into customer success. And I've been in the current team, what, 3 years? Yeah, I think 3 years now. Yeah. So I'm lucky enough to be able to spend a lot of my time doing solution engineering. So that is kind of how do we solve problems for people on a big scale? And the answer is typically by making things easier with them, by hopefully making things easier with things like modules, accelerators, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of basics. What is a landing zone? If you think about a metropolis analogy, you can see that before you build any buildings, workloads, you need to have services like electricity and water and gas and things like that. So you can think of your platform landing zone as the kind of foundational services upon which you need to build the actual stuff that you care about and your business cares about. So in this context, we're talking about core networking, access control, policy, governance, all that stuff that you need to have done before you actually put workloads on it. And so there's a balance. Some people in that metropolis, they want Vegas, right? They don't want to be able to do anything, right? Some people in that city, in that metropolis, they want kind of more governed stuff. And the kind of analogy, the reason I'm using that analogy is because if people want to try stuff out, Vegas, right? They want to say, can I use this service? Does this service do what I want? In that, we've kind of got sandboxes in our landing zones for that sort of thing. And that has a different kind of governance to your more corporate stuff where you need rigor and you need strong governance because it's a production workload, right? So the idea is to strike that balance. And when you're designing your landing zones and your governance, you come up with the ability to accelerate workload adoption in your sandboxes, but also as you bring that closer to production, then that governance and rigor kind of increases and you get what you need. So this slight eye chart, apologies, is our kind of map of everything platform landing zones for platform landing zones and application landing zones actually. So everything Azure landing zones. So we've got our management group hierarchy up here. We've got our kind of platform stuff, which is here, which is like core networking. If you've got any domain controllers, they probably live in there as well. Firewalls, ingress, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got our application landing zones. And these are things that we advocate using subscriptions for as a means of scale. So an application might be one subscription, it might be many, depending on the type of workload you've got and the kind of scaling limits of that and how you want to deploy it. So yeah, like the move from kind of a resource group scoped application subscription to a subscription scoped application, I guess, is quite a big one. And it's something that we're going to talk a lot about because traditionally organizations haven't been very good at kind of creating subscriptions on demand. And it's one of the key tenets that we need to get right because it can really accelerate your ability to deploy workloads in Azure. So let's talk about Terraform. I know a few people here have used the caf-enterprise-scale module. It's recently surpassed 1 million downloads on the registry, which is amazing. And when we released that, I mean, it was before I joined, right? Before I joined the team, so it's roughly 4 years ago. Was it? Yeah, okay. So 4 years-ish. And the brief was to have an opinionated way of deploying the ALZ reference architecture. And it completely fulfilled that. And it was really good. It was really amazing. And it was configurable to an extent. But what we heard is that if you wanted to change the name of a management group, like you didn't like you didn't like landing zones, you wanted to call it workloads, right? If you did that, then the module kind of stopped working and it was hard and it didn't work. So we realized that that kind of opinionated kind of approach was a bit limited. So what we've done is we've changed it and we've said, okay, well, let's break that up and let's make it much, much less opinionated. In fact, we've gone completely the other way in terms of you can completely customize everything now. So yeah, not lots, but more smaller modules rather than one bigger one is the kind of headline. That's been done for a couple of reasons. One, it's easy for us to test and maintain. Like when the caf-enterprise-scale module, the old one, was so big that it was so difficult for us to test every permutation, it became very, very difficult. So actually having a different module for virtual WAN as hub and spoke means that we can iterate them both separately. And yeah, it's just a lot more sensible. It's almost a bit like the move from monolith to microservices in the application space, but in the infrastructure as code space. So this is broadly the collection of stuff that we have now. You can see we've got the AVM pattern ALZ. So if you're familiar with the AVM nomenclature, the PTN stands for pattern module. It just means it's an opinionated thing. It might deploy more than one resource in a certain way, but that, yeah, is opinionated to the workload itself. So yeah, we've got the pattern module that does management groups, does policies, does role, it doesn't actually do role assignments. It does the role assignments for policy, but it doesn't do other role assignments. That was raised as a feature request today. We also got the management module, which does your log analytics, data collection rules for Azure Monitor. So that's a new, they only support Azure Monitor now, we don't support the old one. Also does the managed entities that you need for that. And then we've got our connectivity options. Broadly, this is two halves, right? You can either go hub and spoke, you can go virtual WAN, you can go both if you're crazy. Yeah, the point is you've got options. And because these are all separate modules, it's much easier for us to go, okay, we need to fix a bug in this, here's how we test it, here's how we iterate it, bump the version, done. And that we haven't got any risk of breaking anything else. Yeah, so that's why I've done it. So to summarize, the rationale, we've come under, I wouldn't say pressure, but our leadership has been going, hey, our largest customers don't want this monolithic module. They want a more modular approach. I'm sorry, that's a bit difficult to read. I can see some of you squinting. But essentially, our largest customers said they wanted it. That's the reason we're doing it. We're also reaching the limits of what we can do in Terraform, right? So when we come in, the reason we've adopted a provider-based approach is because it just got so complicated to manage in HCL. And if you've ever looked at the code in the caf-enterprise-scale module, you might know that it's pretty complex. And so actually to do the extra stuff we wanted to do, it just got so complicated that we found we couldn't write tests for it really effectively. We couldn't, we just weren't very sure that it was going to work, basically. So the advantage of writing a provider is that you can write unit tests, and it's got a really well-defined testing framework in Go, and you can be pretty confident that it's going to do what you want. But on the other hand, you've got, it does work, look at that. Some customers want that opinionated approach. They don't want to know how to stitch together 4 or 5 different modules and the dependencies between them, and they just want to get going quickly. So what we've done, this is Jared, so well done to Jared, is pioneered the use of this thing called the Accelerator. The Accelerator is the equivalent of caf-enterprise-scale now, so it is the thing that will orchestrate all of these modules together, work out the dependencies between them, give you a working config. Over and above that, it will give you CI/CD. It will give you private runners with private networking, with OpenID Connect, so passwordless authentication for all your stuff. I mean, there is so much best practice baked into this thing. It is amazing. I would say that for 80% of people, use the Accelerator. Like it solves so many problems and makes your life so much easier, and means that you probably won't adopt a bad practice from the outset. So to kind of summarize, the Accelerator, you get a single input document, which is actually generated with PowerShell, so you get this inputs thing. And then you run a PowerShell process, and it generates you essentially a Terraform config, an orchestration module, basically, which is a module that just calls all the other modules. Now, you can run it locally, and it will deploy the stuff to a local file system, or the more sensible option is to pick GitHub or Azure DevOps. And it will then go and create your repo, and it will create your runners, and it will do all this amazing stuff, right, and configure it all, and it will just work. And basically, at the end of it, you click run on the pipeline, and it deploys stuff for you. So yeah, it's really, really, really good. I highly recommend you check it out. The library. So this is one of the biggest changes between the old module and the new. So we've heard from before, right? If you wanted to upgrade your policies, you had to upgrade the version of the CAF module. The problem with that is you might get a feature you didn't want, or a new thing in the module that you didn't want, or didn't care about. Conversely, if you wanted a bug fixed in the module when you upgraded your module, it might upgrade your policies, which you also didn't want to do. So we're like, okay, we need to decouple this. The data, the opinion needs to be separate from the logic, right, the module. And that's what we've done. So the provider and the associated module are deliberately not opinionated. They're just taking a configuration and they deploy that in terms of management group policies, things like that. The library is the opinionated thing. And the idea, and we're heading towards that idea, is that it's going to be a source of truth for all of Azure landing zones. And also, and only fans of Amber in here, the Azure Monitor baseline architecture alerts. There you go. So, so yeah, if you're familiar with Amber, really, really easy to integrate that now with Terraform, and I'll show you how to do it in a minute. Whereas before, in the old caf-enterprise-scale module, it was a bit difficult. So now we can have all of this stuff in the library, and you can literally pick and choose and go, okay, that's what I want. It's versioned so that you can update the module, you can update your ALZ module or the provider version, and you'll still have the same policies because it's literally done by git tag release. Conversely, if you want to update your policies, you just update the reference, and it does it without having to update anything else. So it's a lot more, hopefully it gives you a lot more confidence in that you're not going to get any kind of unwanted changes. It's also extensible. So you can, a bit of the library, so let's say ALZ, can depend on another bit of the library. Bad example. Like if you think about sovereign landing zones, so if you're a government organization, there's a extension to ALZ, let's call it that means you have maybe some more management groups and some more policy assignments and things like that. But the sovereign landing zones team don't want to define the whole architecture, they just want to add a bit on. So they can do that because their bit of the library depends on ALZ, and it will depend on a particular version of ALZ, but it'll add all this other stuff, and they can add more architectures into it. So this isn't just relevant to us as Microsoft, this is relevant to you potentially as customers and service providers, because you can actually host your own library. It's just Git. Like, you can host this yourself, and you can actually override where the provider gets its library from, the default library. You can just say, actually, no, it's here now. So you can have a completely your own copy of this. So yeah, you can basically do what you want. In the future, hopefully this financial year. That's not on.
Yeah, we actually had a question in online about Bicep already. Like, when are we doing this for Bicep? Hopefully by March, we're going to have an MVP of this available that uses the library. So the library becomes the new source of truth for all of everything ALZ policy and where stuff gets assigned and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, me and Matt wrote a document about the library and wanting to do it, what, 2.5 years ago?
Yeah,
so we're slowly getting there. We're slowly executing on the document we wrote, but yeah, like we are going to get this done for Bicep. Hopefully by March for an MVP, and then end of the financial year, which will be sort of June, July time for production GA release.
Cool. And following on from that, because we can generate an ARM template from Bicep, the idea is to get the portal experience will also be based from the Bicep one. So the idea, at the moment, we have to synchronize stuff around, and it's a bit of a pain. So the idea is that this will become the source of everything, and it means that we can iterate quickly. In actual fact, we've just done what we're calling the February 2025 policy refresh, right? That's in the portal now. Like, the automation ran, click done, and it was like minutes, and we can just release it.
Overnight, we literally woke up and like, oh, there's a pull request with it already done. So like, we just need to approve that and check it.
And so, yeah, and for you, that means there's no delay between us doing the policies and you being able to consume them. So yeah, I'm quite proud of it. It's really good, and I'll show you a little bit of how to use it in a minute. Now, in fact. Okay, you read that? Okay, all right. So this is the ALZ module. You can see that it's referenced from the registry, and like a good boy, I've pinned it to a specific version. Okay, so I'm going to say I want the ALZ architecture, because that's what I need to do to start with. If we look at the Terraform thing, oh dear, I didn't tidy up after practicing this. What I'm going to do is delete that, because I don't want it. Essentially, I've got the ALZ provider referenced, and the AZ API provider, because we use AZ API now, because it's just better, basically. What we're going to do, essentially, this is the default configuration. I've got the architecture name that we want to deploy. How do we know what that is? Well, this might, hang on, I forgot I need a web browser. There you go. So if we go to the library, this is the GitHub library. I'll make it a little larger so we can see what's going on. If we go to the platform ALZ directory, we can see that we've got a lot of stuff in here, but this document here is what we want to look at. This document is automatically generated. I'll show you how we do that later, including all the diagrams and stuff. It's automatically generated based on the contents of the library. So yeah, we can see that essentially we've got an architecture called ALZ in here, and here's a picture of what it's going to deploy. So that's quite handy. How do we know that we're using this bit of the library? Well, the provider has a default, right? So the provider, you might have seen the library references thing that I showed. earlier in the provider configuration, right? The library references, right? That thing. That's got a default in the provider, so that points to a specific version. So just to make it easier for people to get going, it picks a default. But you can override it. So what we can do is, and this takes a little while, so I'm going to use a bit of demo magic here. If I could Terraform plan this, you can see that it's going to spit out a plan at the end of it, basically. So this library read, which we'll be doing in a minute. Yeah, so the module data ALZ architecture reading takes about 30 or 40 seconds. Why does it take so long? Well, it is looking at the library, so it's downloading that thing from GitHub, and then it's looking at all the policy assignments, all of the set definitions, and all of the reference definitions, and it's getting them all from Azure. The reason it's doing that is because we need to know the contents of the definitions so that we can correctly calculate the role assignments that we need to make for policy. So that's the reason this basically takes so long. And it normally takes between 30 and 40 seconds. So, but what will happen during this demo is we'll probably get throttled because you run out of policy read requests. There you go, 43 seconds. Right? So it's done it, and it'll spit out a plan of 390 to add. Right? Now, I've actually made this plan before, and I've converted it into JSON, so we can go tfplan.doc, right, which is a little tool I wrote to make it slightly easier to look at plans. And you can see that that is not formatted very well, so let's just run that again. That's also not formatted very well. I'm going to close that one because that's annoying me now. Okay, there you go, right. So you can see that this is what it's doing, and you can see that it's creating these management groups. So these are basically what's in that diagram. So it's probably likely that you don't want this management group hierarchy. You probably want to rename it. And so in order to do that, you need to create your own library. Now, libraries can be augmented, so you don't have to create the whole thing yourself. You can just say, look, I'm going to create my own one with my own architecture in it that's just got some slightly different management group names. So let's look at how to do that. So the first thing we need to do is add in a provider the library references, that's what it's called. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. And because it's Terraform, obviously, we've got all the tooltips to help us. And then we need to add two. Because we're going to have our own version, we can override the default, basically. So we need to add in the ALZ one. So you can see the tooltips are here to help us. Essentially, you can either specify it as a custom URL, like a file system or Git reference or whatever, right? Or you can specify a path and a ref. The path and ref means it's in the library. So if we do a path, platform ALZ, it's almost like it's remembered. You can see that this means that we're going to load in the platform ALZ and we're going to load in this release version. We're also going to load in a custom URL, which is our local file system. And that's in the lib folder, which I've got here. So here's a file I created earlier called custom. Now what I've just downloaded this file from the library itself, and I've converted it to YAML because I prefer it, but you can use YAML or JSON, it doesn't matter, the provider doesn't care. And you can see up the top that it's got this thing here, which is the schema. So we have registered these file extensions with the schema store to make your life easier, right? So if I delete that and then go control space, it knows that there should be an exists property. Right? That's whether the management group exists or not, or whether you want the provider to create it, basically. So you can see we've got a hierarchy in here. And you can see it starts with the root, and parent ID is null. If parent ID is null, it means it takes whatever you put in the provider as the root resource ID. So typically the tenant ID for your root management group. And I've been really excited here, and I've changed this to be my ALZ instead of ALZ. And that's what I've done. Okay. So let's go back here, and then let's run a Terraform plan again. So I just double check. I'm questioning myself whether I actually did the library references. I did. So if I run a Terraform plan again, that is going to spit out another thing. Basically, what I'll do though is, because that's going to take another 20 seconds, I was going to stop it. I'm going to show you one I created earlier. because I'll just be sitting here looking at it. So this is what it would create. You can see it's got all the policy definitions, the policy role assignments, all the stuff like that. But basically, the key bit here is that the top-level manager group is now called My ALZ. Right? So it's pretty easy to customize. The nice thing is that customizing this doesn't break anything else. Right? So you can rename this to whatever you want. And I don't know if you noticed, but in the custom thing here, we've got the archetypes that are associated to it, which are the archetypes of the collections of policies and role definitions and all that kind of stuff. So this is the bit that allows you to basically customize it how you like. So we've got root, archetypes, platform on platform. And how do we know what they are? Well, they're in the docs. So if we go back to here, here's the documentation. Here's the connectivity archetype. You can see connectivity's got one policy assignment by default called enable DDoS VNet. You can see that the corp's got 5. So this is how you can kind of string this together. If we take a look at another member of the library, so Amber, you can see that Amber's got its own architecture. This is just a sample one. This is just to give you an idea of what it would deploy. And they've got its own archetypes like Amber root, Amber landing zones, Amber platform, Amber right? So what's going on with this? Well, Amber connectivity has a policy assignment called that, right? Amber root is going to have 116. It's a lot of custom policy there that you can see. So you kind of know what you're getting. Another bit of feedback that we had actually from this is like, how do I know I'm deploying? So this kind of answers that question because this document is automatically generated and we check that the document is up to date before we create a release. So before you can merge a PR into this repo, it checks that this doc is accurate. If it's not, you have to fix it. So yeah, this is how you know what you're getting. The way you can check as well is you can check the tags, right? So if you look at the tags, you can pick platform Amber and the tag, and then you know that that's exactly what you're going to get for that particular release. Okay, so it's all Git versioned and happy. So, okay, so that's cool. So that's just renaming stuff. That's not massively interesting. What about if we wanted Amber as well? So what we can do here is, because we've got what first thing we need to do actually, Matthew, is load in the Amber library reference. So, oh, I hate that. There you go. So let's do that. Let's add that in like that. So now what we've done is we've told the provider that we want to use ALZ with this version. We also want to use Amber with this version. We also want to use our custom library. So using Amber with that version brings in all those policies and all this extra stuff that we want. And now we can compose our own architecture, which might look like this. So this looks the same as the custom one. But if I go, I put in here Amber root, right? That's basically told it to put all the Amber policies and policy assignments as well as the ALZ ones, because the root archetype exists in ALZ. So basically combine the two and chuck them on that management group. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So potentially if you could have custom regulatory requirements, you could have custom this, you custom that, and you can basically compose it all using these files and deploy it in your environment. The other thing we need to do, which I didn't forget to do before, is change this. So the architecture name is really important. So if you look at the Amber one, sorry, the name is custom Amber. So you put that in here and tell it to do that one instead. Okay. Again, exactly the same thing. So you would go Terraform plan now, and that will go off and think about it for quite a long time. Essentially, that will go and download all of ALZ again, all the Amber stuff, make sure it's all deployable. A lot of the work we put into this is actually to make sure that what you've told it to deploy is actually deployable. And the idea is it will tell you here before you actually get halfway through a Terraform apply, and then it just blows up and goes, oh, no, I can't do it. So yeah, that's the idea. I am going to stop that though, because I've got the plan that I created earlier. And you can see that number 3, basically, yeah, so up the top. Yeah, deploy Amber connectivity. Look, you saw that policy assignment there. So it's combined the two, make sure it all works. It'll also do the role assignments of policy and things like that. But there's another kind of thing. So part of the original module, part of the caf-enterprise-scale module, was that it made it really easy for you to say, this is my log analytics workspace, and I want you to just put that in all the right places so that I don't have to worry about policy. Like, well, how do you do that, Matthew? How do you do that? Because that sounds really hard now. So we could do that. That's Teams.
That's a natural habit.
Yeah. You could do that using the policy assignments to modify thing, and then you could go, you could put in the management group, connectivity, and then you could put in equals, and then you could put in the name of the policy assignment you wanted, name equals, and then you could put in a load of stuff to modify. You could add in custom user-side managed identities, you could change parameters, you could change resource selectors we support the other thing, which is not resource selectors, but is overrides, right? Is basically, yeah, so everything that you can do with policy we support in here. But that's quite tedious because you've got to kind of know what to modify. If only there was an easier way. There's an easier way. So what we do, we have this thing in the provider called, and I agree, this is probably, should have a better name, but we have this thing called policy default values. And this is the way for the people who author the library, in this case ALZ, to say, look, we've got a common scenario where we need the log analytics workspace ID. Okay, so let's find that, because yeah, log analytics workspace ID. So we've got a default name called log analytics workspace ID. And in that, it tells you, this is documentation, tells you that once you supply that value, it will get put into all of these policies with all of these parameter names. So that makes it really easy for you to go, okay, well, look, it's just this. This is what I need. So the way I would actually implement that is by going into here and going policy default values, and that's a map. And then I would go log analytics workspace ID, and then I put that in, right? So, yeah, and then that would go subscriptions, whatever, right? And then that would put it into all those policies for you. Now the accelerator does this for you. So if you use the accelerator, you don't really need to worry about it because it kind of works out what this should be and does it for you. But if you're not using the accelerator, that's how you do it. And again, it's all documented on the library site. And yeah, just the idea is it makes it easier for you. You might have seen some of the other defaults there, which are to do with Azure monitoring agents, DDoS protection plans. We've just tried to make it quite easy. Each default has a description as well. So that's how we've tried to keep that kind of simplification in there, where the old module did it and it was quite opinionated and it just did it for you and it was kind of automagically done. Now we've kind of exposed that and it's actually customizable. So you can just, well, again, we published a schema for this file. So if you want to make your own, you can make your own. It's just here, I think. Yeah, it's just a JSON file, right? So it's just the name of the default, description, the parameter names, and the policy assignment name, right? And that's it. So you can, it's extensible, you can change it. That's how we do it. Some of the tooling that we've got, and Jack's been using this stuff actually. Some of the tooling we've got is, we've made this thing called ALZ lib tool. So ALZ lib is the library that sits behind the provider. And the reason we wrote it as a separate library is because if any of you out there wanted to generate a Pulumi version of this, you can crack on because you can use ALZ lib and it's got the brains and it's got the stuff in it to actually makes it work. And then you want to crack on with Pulumi, absolutely be my guest. And I would love if someone did that, would be really cool. But that's the reason that they're separate, is because the kind of, the brains is separate from the Terraform provider specific stuff. So yeah, so we've got like ALZ lib tool. So we can go ALZ tool document library. Oh, what's that? Okay, so this is a cool error message, and it was I knew it was going to happen. Basically, error adding management group, not archetype not found, right? Okay, so the reason is that we need this file here. So whenever we use the ALZ lib tool, we need a metadata file, and this replaces almost those library references that you use. So you can create this, and you can put this in here, and this tells the ALZ lib what the dependencies are and things like that, right? So you would create a metadata file. You could either do, you would create a metadata file if you were kind of hosting your own library for consumption by other people, right? So I've got a metadata file in here. I've got it my custom library. This is a demo, and I've just put the dependencies in, which you'll notice look remarkably familiar to what I had in my Terraform configuration. So if I was doing it this way, I would take it out the Terraform config and just leave it in here, and then it would kind of work it out. It's complaining about schema, is it? It's, yeah, schema, missing property display name. Okay. Right, so that's how you do that. So now I can run the tool again. It's taking longer. So it's downloading the dependencies from GitHub at this point and sticking them in a hidden folder called ALZ lib. Like the Terraform has its own hidden folder called .terraform. This has got its own called ALZ lib. And oh, another error, which I deliberately put there as well because it's showing you that this is checking the hierarchy before it deploys it. So error adding management group platform, which is configured as existing, but the parent management group, my ALZ, does not exist and would be created. So you've made a mistake in your architecture configuration by saying this management group exists, but its parent doesn't. So again, we can correct that. So it's the platform management group that has the issue. So if we go here and go platform and go exists equals false, then we can run this again. Now, you might be asking, why are we able to run a Terraform plan when this check should have been in there? And the answer is because this was a bug that I added in a couple of days ago that's not yet in the current version of the provider. But you get the idea. It will be soon. So that's then generated a README file for this library, which is really cool. So we can have a look and have a look at that README and get a preview. And you can see it looks remarkably like the stuff in the library. It's got a picture, and it's got another picture, and it's got another picture, right? There's lots of architectures in here because it's pulled in all the dependencies. So yeah, and it's got all this stuff. So that's how you do that. There's also a tool, there's also a way, and this is what we run on pull requests. You can run check library, which will do a more thorough check, and it'll take, again, 40 seconds or so, because it's doing the full deployment check. And this is what we run before any pull request can be merged, to make sure that the stuff that is in the library is actually deployable and will work. And we're going to go further because at the moment we don't perform actual upgrade testing. So we kind of check that any individual version is sound and works. What we don't do is deploy the previous version and then deploy the other one over the top and see if it actually works. That's coming. And yes, so it's basically checking all the definitions you've got in your library are referenced. So you haven't got any orphaned policy definitions and not referenced in any archetypes. It's then checking that architectures are deployable. Again, it takes 40 odd seconds. And then it'll come out and it'll say it's all okay. So yeah, loads and loads of good stuff that's kind of baked into this that is completely agnostic really to Terraform. It's just a way of describing management group architectures and a way of describing policies associated with them. It's kind of all it is. There's one other tool which I won't run, but basically it's what Jack's going to use to do the bicep stuff. And essentially, I think, what's it called? It's called Generate, yeah. You call Generate Architecture, and you have to give it the name of the architecture you want. And when you run it, it spits out about 4 megabytes worth of JSON, and it's basically what would be fed to the Terraform provider, but in JSON format. So if you didn't want to use Terraform, you just wanted to use your own tool, you can use this. It doesn't quite yet support all the customization, so like it hasn't got a way to modify the policy assignments. It doesn't yet understand default values or anything like that, but we can evolve it so it does. But the point is that this is the actual brain. This is the same stuff, same functions, the same methods that have been called in the Terraform provider. They're available to you here if you ever want to go that deep into it, which you probably won't. But yeah, questions at this point before I move on to something else?
Could have guaranteed.
Where do we get the ALZ lib tool?
That's a good question. I'll show you.
Right.
So, no, com/azure/ALZ lib. ALZ lib is the brains behind the provider. If you look at command, actually, no, don't do that. Look at releases, because we actually compile it now for you. And if you look at releases, we make the ALZ lib tool as for every release we do downloadable. So for pretty much any architecture you've got, you can just download it. And soon that will be code signed, but it's not at the moment. So yeah, that's where you get it from, and you can run it and use it locally. We'd love feedback on it. Its status is probably experimental. I would say there's a bug the other day where I found that if the command line tool had an error, it would display the error, but then it would just carry on. It wouldn't quit. So it might be a bit rough around the edges, but yeah, we'd love your feedback on it.
Yeah, fantastic. So have you seen people run it in like a pipeline?
I haven't seen, no, the only people that run it in a pipeline is me at the moment. But if you had the scenario where you had your own library of kind of architectures and stuff, then this would be, you should run this tool. And you can copy, so if you look at the Azure Landing Zones library, you can copy all of our CI/CD basically and use it as an inspiration, because in here we've got a PR check workflow. And so what this does broadly is it looks for the libraries that have changed. Because we recognize the library is going to be maintained by more than one people, we don't want to scan every single bit of it on every pull request. So this basically looks at what's changed, and then it will run this checklib job for every library member that's changed. So the ALZ or Amber or whichever one. And it basically runs the tool, and we use it for, we use a makefile to simplify it, but basically that's what it does. It runs this tool and downloads it. So if you want to copy it, feel free.
So one of the things that we use from the ALZ module at the moment is archetype exclusions. So we pull down ALZ, but we want to exclude certain policies from certain archetypes. Is that, how would you do that in this new, new model?
Good question. So, I created a custom library and I just put the architecture file in there. So you can put lots of other files in there. And if you look at the Azure Landing Zones library documentation, in the assets section, we've put in all the stuff that you can have in a library, right? So we describe, what you can have. So the bit you're interested in here is the archetype overrides. You might kind of, there's a lot of similarity between the old version and here. So you can have any JSON, YAML, or YML file, and here's an example of one, right? So hopefully that's readable, make it a bit bigger. But yeah, essentially it creates a new archetype based on the old one, but with the additions and removals. And the idea is that you don't have to fork it. You can just customize it. And what you then need to do is so let's say this was called Landing Zones Override. What you then need to do is in your architecture, it's called Landing Zones, you need to change the name of this to Landing Zones Override, and then it would do that for you.
It's nicer, cleaner. Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
more?
So when you create, say for example, this and you're about to deploy it, is there a way that you can, I mean, I use Bicep more than Terraform, but
Ooh.
I know.
Sorry.
Is there a way that you can, where you've renamed it to my ALZ, is there a way that you can kind of spit it out to your README? Are you like any tools that you've got either come in or that you use at the moment?
Yes, so that will do that. So if I rename start again. The ALZ libtool document command documents whatever's in this architecture. So if you wanted to, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so essentially the idea is, say you wanted to have basically a way to audit what we're creating. So once it's redeployed, it'll essentially update the README with, oh, you've now got, say, like a new management group structure that we created, where you've got your design in your README. Is there a way to like actively update that?
So I think if Bicep's slightly different because you could use this to generate the data for Bicep to deploy the management group hierarchy.
Yeah.
What this isn't a tool to make sure, because it's not state-based, it's difficult then to absolutely verify that that's what's been deployed because it doesn't really understand that. So with a Terraform, you just run Terraform plan again and check that it was correct. With Bicep, you can run Bicep what if? Yeah. Mixed results. Yeah.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think if you wanted to do that, you might have to. I don't think this tool is going to do what you want it to do for Bicep, if that makes sense. But yeah, okay. It just because it just documents what's local. It doesn't document what's actually been deployed.
Yeah. Cool. Fun. So with we can obviously do the policy exclusions, so to not apply something. Yep. How about policy waivers or?
Yeah.
Somebody raises in the LinkedIn chat.
Okay.
Fantastic. I was about to say if not, and this isn't going to be fruitful.
Yeah. So the module doesn't do it at the moment. The module does output pretty much everything it creates in terms of resource IDs. So if you wanted to do exemptions, you could do that. I'd be interested I want real world examples of how teams are managing exemptions and if it's a different team, if it's the same team, you know, how are you managing that request process? Because that would dictate how we implement it. Because yeah, it's a good ask, and we need to do something. We don't really know how to do it at the moment.
I think when you load the module,
Yeah,
and you see all of your policies for all of your like management group structure. So let's just say you've got like the one for root or platform or connectivity or whatever it is, and then you change your default values for that policy. That would be a fantastic place, because then looking at the Terraform file, you can see, oh, okay, that's that policy. Oh, and here's the overrides. However, there's so much data that goes into like a waiver or a policy exemption or something like that.
So you think
yeah, I understand why that would be.
You think something like this, and then some sort of blurb, because you could have it as a variable probably. I mean, look, AI's told me how to do it. But there you go. But we could do something like that. The exemption is actually created. The reason that we're a bit hesitant to do it here, and it's probably a soft reason, is that the exemption is actually created at the scope of the exemption. It's not created at the scope of the policy assignment. So do we want to be, I don't know. And then what if you delete the resource? And, you know, yeah, so.
But you also need permissions at the scope of the assignment to be able to make it, which is like the guardrail effectively.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this is an interesting one, and maybe it's the thing that we provide an option to do it here if people want to do it. But if people want to do it outside, like personally today, I think I would manage exemptions natively myself, like with an AVM module for exemptions, because it's very deliberate, like what people are creating outside of this module. But I think there is definitely a gap for putting it inside of here. And that's exactly what I said in the LinkedIn chat. I said, don't think the module does it today. No, it doesn't. But raise a feature request if you're interested with some examples of like how you would like it to look, because we're absolutely open to adding it.
I don't think it'd be massively difficult to do.
No. So it's just, how do you then as teams give people permissions to your repo to put in their own exemptions that you then check? Or how are you managing that request process? Like, because you don't just want to let them go, yeah, they can do it. And somebody like blindly goes commit and says, approve that PR. And there's an exemption for, you know, all your policies and they've got the scope wrong or whatever. How are you going to control what they're exempting? And I think that's the bit that we want to work out before we go and do something like this. Because as soon as we, like, I think what we've both learned from providing tools like this is as soon as we provide like a way, people might use it in a completely different way that we've anticipated. And we're like, yeah, we wouldn't have done that with it, because that's now, you know, you've basically opened a back door that anybody can create an exemption at any scope, because this runs with such high level permissions. Because you're deploying your whole ALZ hierarchy here. So you really need that governance of your CI/CD and version control system to be robust, versus where most people might not have that in place, but they go, oh, well, this module can do it, so I'll use it. And like, boom, like, you know, off they go, and they've created an exemption for the whole platform without actually remembering that they were doing that. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
So yeah, the answer is, sorry, you got to do it yourself.
But if you want an example, maybe that's a fair call out of an example today that we need to add to the actually, did you want to show the tech docs?
That's a good idea, yeah. So we've also problem statement, we've got like 10,000 repos, and each of them has got a wiki, and how do you know where to go to get stuff? Well, we've kind of centralized
we're getting there.
Yeah. So it's akms/alz/tech-docs.
Just tech docs, just one word.
Jack's the short link master. Yeah, so you can see here we've got all of the documentation how to get started, all of the technical documentation for how to get started with ALZ, from the enterprise bootstrap. So, you know, what do you need to get started? 3 subscriptions, some permissions, basically that kind of stuff. Got the accelerator docs in terms of the user guide. So the phases that we have, some advanced scenarios, how to customize it, things like that. It's all there. The advantage of us having it here rather than anywhere else is that we can update it like that. Like if there's a problem, we can do it. We don't have to get the content reviewed. So yeah, so the Terraform docs are here. So we've got a getting started guide. Most of this stuff is please use the accelerator because it's a lot easier. But if you really want to do it, then I'm going for read aloud. Definitely don't want to do that. Yeah, so it's basically getting started with Terraform module. Use how to do git ignore. Do you need a custom library? Probably yes. Policy assignment default values, whatever, right? And we've also got how to kind of, if you don't want to use DDoS because you're not a millionaire, then you can disable the policy like that. Right? So we covered that. Actually, this section can go now. You fixed it.
You did fix it.
Yeah. There you go. Something we need to do. So, no, I just accidentally did it. But you used to have to create additional role assignments because some of the built-in policies weren't quite configured correctly. But you don't have to do that anymore because we fixed it. So yeah, this is the tech doc site. We've got some how-tos basically. So maybe a how-to would be a good example.
Yeah, exactly. And like this is a really good place for any of you looking to use this module. Like a lot of the things that Matt's shown tonight, like using a custom library, modifying the archetypes like you asked, how do you modify the management group hierarchy or using your own library. We've documented some of those scenarios here. And if you want to see more of these, hit the little bug in the top window, in the top. That'll instantly take you to where to create an issue on our GitHub repo. And yeah, we all sit there and watch it patiently every hour of the day. So yeah, we're pretty quick on replying to things like that.
So this is how this, by the way, at the moment it goes there, right? But this is if you wanted to change the library location. Let's just set this environment variable, and you can have your own forked version of it. If you don't trust us not to mess something up, then.
And I think it's a really good thing for partners, right? So partners who want to provide their own value and like this is our own variant on top of ALZ. Cool, we've got our own library that we lock away that we give access to. This is how they can then go, right, we're going to use all the same tooling. We've got to reinvent the wheel, but we've got our own library locked away somewhere that is our IP that people can then build on top of. So yeah, we're really trying to encompass quite a few scenarios in the new version. Any other questions?
Yep.
Sorry about this. So updating the policy set.
Yeah.
So I've yet to do it in the new like AVM. What is any recommendations or guidance for someone changing the value? And also, I kind of got started by adding in the tag, the one that was spit out by the accelerator. However, I don't actually know where to get the new tag for the new policy sets. So yeah, two-pronged question: where to get the tag, and what's the experience of changing it? So
you already know, by the sounds of it, that you need to update the library reference. So that's this value here. That's annoying. How do you know what to put in there? Have I still got the library open? Yeah. So you check out the releases page of the library repository. And we always make ALZ the latest, but you might find that the latest Amber is buried down here somewhere, but we always make the latest Azure landing zones. We'll try and put some sensible notes in here as well about what we've done. So we had to rename sandboxes to sandbox, and we had to do something else just because alignment and making sure everything's consistent. But yeah, so that's basically where you do that. So noting those breaking changes, if you've already deployed it and yours was called sandboxes, you'd need to make sure you had a custom architecture with sandboxes, otherwise it wouldn't work. But yeah, the experience is you change the tag, you run a Terraform plan, and based on our testing, it should just go over the top. If it doesn't, let us know. The idea is that we are not making breaking changes in the policy space. So we will always create a new assignment if we're going to remove a property, which would Terraform, or if a definition, if a custom def is updated and there's a breaking change to that, we'll use a new custom definition because otherwise Terraform doesn't yet understand doesn't understand that it's got to delete the assignment before it recreates the definition and then reassign it. We might get there. There is scope to do that. We just haven't experimented with that yet. So we're quite disciplined now in terms of not doing that. If you have a problem, obviously raise an issue.
Yeah, we have loads of testing that goes on in the enterprise scale repo, which is where the library sort of is sourced from today, but that will change in the future. The library will become the real source of truth where we update. But today, that's the enterprise scale repo. It then syncs to the ALZ library, but we will kill that linkage at some point when we make the library the real source of truth. So at the enterprise scale source of ingestion, that repo, we have so many pester tests to make sure that we're not doing bad things in our policies and we don't introduce breaking changes. We've been pretty, touch wood, we've been pretty safe for like sort of the last 18 months of not running into any of those as we've learned. And we're working really close with the policy product groups to get access to policy versioning for custom definitions, which will make our lives a lot easier where you won't run into breaking changes and you'll be able to update an existing assigned definition in place because you're adding a new version for it and then you change the assignment after the fact. So that stuff's coming. It's there for built-ins today in preview. But yeah, we're hoping to get that for customs pretty soon as well. So
is there a place where you can see like that trust statement, like we do this, we won't do that, we won't break anything?
Yeah, actually, if you go on the enterprise-scale repo wiki, aka.ms/ALZ/wiki, they're burnt in my brain. If you go down on the policy, the contribution section, which is near the bottom. Yeah, and then there's one that's like ALZ custom policies.
Yep.
So in here, we list out all of the stuff, like what you have to name them, all that stuff. But if you keep going down, it's like breaking changes, right? So if you're doing any of these things, then you have to do these things to the policy to tell us that it's a breaking change. And then we test for all of these things as well. So like, we don't let anybody make a breaking change now and just leave the name as the same, because that causes us issues downstream. So we force a rename of the entire policy. Hence why you see the date appended to some of our policies now, because that forces Terraform to go, I need to do something new and also remove the old assignment. So it knows how to manage that. So we've put these things in place and we test for that. So if somebody makes a breaking change to a policy, like removes a parameter, our pester checks will kick off and be like, hold on, you haven't renamed the policy, so you can't do that. So, and then we say you have to set things like deprecated to true, and you have to put in metadata that says this is superseded by this and replace this policy. Like, we join up all this metadata, and then tools like the Azure Governance Visualizer and AZ Advertiser read that metadata to help you navigate all of these complex changes as well. So yeah, we put in quite a lot of work into this. Sasha, our colleague in Dubai, puts an awful lot of time and effort into this, and basically that's what he's been doing for the last 18 months, is just owning the policy set in ALZ, and he's done an amazing job with it. So yeah, lots of work goes into this part. Look, it's the lifeblood, right? If we get this wrong, then there's no point in doing ALZ.
Indeed.
Any other questions? No?
All right.
You good?
Yeah, I've got a little bit, that was it on the kind of platformy side of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about application landing zones now, just what they might entail. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to talk about this. Basically, use Accelerator. Do it yourself is definitely doable, but there's a lot of work that's been put into Accelerator. So make sure, if you are doing it yourself, you at least look at the starter modules that come as part of the Accelerator and understand what you're getting yourself into. Benefits, I think we've covered, but kind of the provider does a lot of the checking beforehand to make sure what you want to deploy is deployable. The library is really extensible and allows you to easily customize what you want to deploy. The module, you can customize everything as before, and nothing will break, I promise. It's much faster. Well, it's faster down to AZ API unless you hit a slight issue. It's like sometimes you can take like 15 minutes to deploy a policy assignment, and it's not our fault. It's just the platform sometimes doesn't like it. But yeah, the Accelerator, new features, Bastion's now in it as well. So yeah, loads and loads of good stuff in there. Oh yeah, we've done that. Migration. For your management groups and policies, just deploy another one. As you saw in that plan, there's like 390 resources. I'm not, I don't want to write a tool to migrate 390 resources in Terraform state. I just think it's easier and safer to just deploy another hierarchy and move the subscriptions over. If you don't like it, move them back again. Much, much safer. If you're going to do that, supply the policy default values for the log analytics workspace you've already got, and everything else you've already got, and it will kind of just work. We are going to work on tooling though for people that have deployed critical resources like log analytics, networking, things like that. We're going to write a state migration tool that will essentially generate the move blocks for you and allow you to migrate that state to the new modules. Any questions on migration? It's quite a big topic, so.
Slightly related, what's going to happen with the existing ALZ CAF module?
So it's continue supported. We're going to continue to update it with policies. Once the migration tooling comes out, we will have to think about how long we support that for.
I think our current working mindset is 12 months, right? Roughly somewhere around there. So like once migration tooling's out there and it works and we know it works, we're going to say, right, 12 months-ish, get off.
I mean, it's still an open source project. If you really love it, please fork it and you can continue to use it. But yeah,
there's lots of benefits for moving, so probably move.
Cool. So app landing zones. This is going to be a bit of a change of topic, but hopefully you find it useful. Yeah, you built the platform, but no one wins any prizes for producing a platform landing zone. But you win prizes for deploying workloads on Azure that benefit your business and organization and enterprise that you work for. So you need to enable that kind of cycle of DevOps and continuous improvement and essentially bringing business value. So how do you do that? So a lot of people jump straight to, we need an IDP, we need self-service, we need everything. And you're like, well, you might, but you probably don't need that now. You probably, if you've got an application team that wants you to build all their VMs for them and just give them RDP access, then giving them an IDP is not going to work, right? You need to meet your customers where they are. You need to realize the maturity level of your organization. So when you give landing zones to your teams, you can go from fully managed, what are we calling that?
Centrally governed.
Yeah, so the reason that is because I came up with these slides, but we've already got some naming in CAF, which I didn't follow. So that's the reason I'm having to use my translator over here. Platform managed, which I think is a much better name than
Tech platform.
That's not too bad. This one on the end, fully governed. What do we call it?
Workload centric.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, what we essentially, there's a continuum here of like how much you have to manage as the platform team to how much they have to manage as the application team. That's what we're trying to say. And you need to get that right, otherwise you're not going to be successful. An example of platform managed is like provisioning them a subscription, giving them all the access, giving them a repo, provisioning Kubernetes maybe, and then provisioning Flux and making all that work, and then just giving them a repo. So all they have to do is dump Helm charts into it, and Kubernetes magically deploys the thing, right? So that's the example of the middle one, and that's kind of where, there aren't many application teams I know that would be fully comfortable deploying everything with IAC and then the application code on top of it, right? It's just probably, that's rare. The middle is a kind of the happy medium, I think, on this, from my experience anyway. There are a lot of customers who are still in the fully managed or whatever it was called stage. Like, there's a lot of customers who literally have to, they want to resize a disk on a VM and they have to get someone else to do it for them because they can't do it, right? So it's just realize where you are and where you want to get to. It's kind of what I would say. You begin platform engineering by establishing a team. So you need to recognize that it's a discipline, ultimately. Once you've got that, you need to look for things that are causing you the most pain. And so automating the high toil areas, as I say. For me, one of the biggest ones of these is subscription vending, right? So how it should be easy for you to create a subscription. You should be able to do it in half an hour. If you can't, then do that. Inventory and centralize, what that means is have a look at what your application teams are using and choose tooling and try and find some common tooling, right? Whether that be Azure DevOps or GitHub or Jenkins even. If 80% of people using Jenkins, then maybe just use that, right? Blaze paved paths, so that's kind of starting to say, well, actually, can we automate to a certain extent the request management of this? Can we make it easy for people to request new landing zones without maybe an IDP? Maybe it's just a Teams bot or a Teams channel where people can, or Microsoft form that they fill in, right? Just try and get people to use all this common tooling you've got. We're talking about deploying environments as a service then. This is kind of subscription vending plus, where you're like, okay, yeah, you can pick subscription, you can add Kubernetes onto it, you can add Azure App Service onto it, whatever, right? And then finally, you get to an IDP. But that's probably a little bit down the line. What is an application landing zone? Well, lots of things. So a subscription, probably. A code repo, almost certainly. Some sort of monitoring, governance, security, observation, management. So Defender for cloud, right? You might want to turn that on. Connectivity, almost certainly you're going to want some peering and some routing and some other stuff. Access packages. So a common thing that people tend not to do is to like, okay, well, maybe we need a group. Maybe we need a PIM eligible role. Maybe we need all this other stuff that kind of helps us govern access to subscription. How your devs even going to talk to it? Do they need a dev box? Do they need something else, right? And maybe a platform or service to go in there, as we spoke about, maybe Kubernetes or app service or something. So we've got ALZ, one of our largest customers. It's a public link. All this information is available publicly on the Microsoft News site, but essentially they do application landing zones as a service, and they go the whole hog. Like I'm not directly involved with them, but Jack and I have a weekly call with the team that kind of do this, and they have absolutely blazing a trail with this stuff. It's amazing, all delivered via Terraform, absolutely incredible. So it is doable, but it's basically what I'm trying to get across. We do have customers doing this. So action plan, if you're going to take away, like if you're thinking about how to automate app landing zones, like what's the first things I need to do? Automate subscription creation. I'm going to bang on about this loads. Take a look at our application landing zone accelerators. So we've got them for Kubernetes, Azure Virtual Desktop, VM, yeah, AVS now, yeah. Yeah, that's on there, but yes. But yeah, so there's loads of them out there that help you, again, don't have to reinvent the wheel. Then once you've done that, start thinking about the DevOps stuff. The reason I put that last on the list is we don't actually have anything at the moment in that space, right? We are working to extend the accelerator to do this kind of stuff, but it doesn't do it yet. I'll come onto our roadmap in a minute. I'd recommend if you're using Terraform to use AZ API, especially if you're writing modules, because when the people that you write modules for say, I want this feature, then you can give it to them with AZ API. With Azure RM, you might be waiting 3 months, 6 months, whatever, until someone adds it. So yeah, day zero access, it's faster. You've got more control over failure modes and stuff like that, and you can tell it to retry and all the kind of clever stuff. So highly recommend you do that. This is our roadmap. So the accelerator at the moment is for platform landing zones only. So the basics, the kind of the base upon which you build. The accelerator we're gonna extend. I say we, Jared, is going to extend. It's going to have an opinionated approach to request API. So we're going to say, well, this is what we think you should submit in terms of a JSON body or whatever. We're going to continue to align AVM with the application workload accelerators. So some of them have already done. I think the AVD one is already an AVM module. The problem we had there is a kind of ordering issue, right? The application workload accelerators existing before AVM, so we've now got the job of trying to kind of get them aligned. And yeah, we want to hear from you. Like, what's important to you? So we're going to start. We've already got subscription vending modules out there already. What's the next bits that you need? Like what? I'm going to guess it's like code repos, runners, that kind of stuff, right? But on top of that, what's important to you? We're always listening. We'd love to have your feedback on what you need. And that's it.
Well, first of all, a round of applause. Lots taken.
Right up here.
Any questions? Any more questions about app landing zones or platform landing zones, or why we name things like that? And it's because 10 people are in the room. Yeah. No, I don't think there's anything else online. I think we've answered most of the stuff from online, so we're good. Anything else? Final calls?
No, I think we've got plenty of beer and pizza left, so
yeah,
feel free to
carry on over that.
Mingle, eat some more, drink some more. But yeah, again, thanks to Matt for the chat. And
no, thanks for coming. It's been great.
No, thank you very much. And with that, we'll wrap it up.
Thanks.